The alien princess warned everyone. The human was hers alone. The walls shimmered with displays of interstellar charts, maps of disputed territories, and holograms of colonies that spanned galaxies. Yet, despite the dazzling technology, the atmosphere was tense, as if everyone sensed that today would not be ordinary. In the center of the grand hall, the delegates had already taken their places. Each species had its own way of showing respect or dominance. The quadrupedal Rhinari bowed with precise angles, the feathered Solari fluttered their wings nervously, and the towering metallic bodies of the Zeltrons gleamed under the hall's lights. They were all here to discuss trade, peace agreements, and cultural exchange programs. No one expected an announcement that would change everything. Princess Cerixa of the Aurelian Ascendancy entered the hall with quiet authority. Her presence alone was enough to command attention. She moved with grace, her long, silver robes trailing behind her, her eyes bright and sharp. She had a reputation across the galaxy for being wise, calm, and unflinchingly logical. Even the most cunning diplomats dared not underestimate her. As she approached the podium, the chatter of the delegates fell into silence. All eyes turned to her. The air seemed to thicken, as if the entire hall was holding its breath. Princess Cerixa did not speak immediately. She paused, surveying the crowd with a cool, calculating gaze. Then, with a voice that was soft yet firm, she said words that would echo across the galaxy for months to come. "This assembly has gathered to discuss many matters of importance," she began. "Trade agreements, interstellar law, and cultural exchange. But today I must speak of something far more urgent. There is a human among us, one who is under my protection. He is hers alone." A murmur ran through the hall, rising quickly into confused chatter. Delegates exchanged glances. Humans were not powerful in the galaxy. They were newcomers, seen as fragile and inexperienced. No one had ever heard of a human being singled out in such a way, especially not by a royal of the Aurelian Ascendancy. "Her?" asked a Rhinari delegate, leaning forward. Their voice was melodic but carried an edge of disbelief. "You mean a human female?" Cerix's gaze shifted to the center of the hall, where a single human stood, looking small and uncertain amid the sea of alien faces. His name was Elias Ward. He was dressed in simple attire, a standard uniform for cultural liaisons, not at all what anyone would expect from someone under the protection of a princess. His brown hair fell slightly over his forehead, and his eyes were wide, reflecting both confusion and curiosity. "No," Cerixa said, her tone calm but uncompromising. "The human is male, and he is hers alone, not because of politics, power, or wealth, but because of choice. I claim him as under my protection, and any interference will be considered an insult to my empire." The hall erupted in shocked voices. Questions, protests, and whispers mingled in the air. Delegates leaned over to their neighbors, exchanging theories and speculations. "Why a human?" asked a Solari delegate, their feathers ruffling in agitation. "We have no idea what makes him special. Humans are weak, disorganized, and—" "Enough," Cerixa said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The room fell silent once more. "You misunderstand. I am not protecting him because he is dangerous. I am protecting you. Harm him and you risk consequences you cannot even imagine." No one moved. No one spoke. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Humans were not seen as a threat, yet Cerix's calm warning carried a weight that no one could dismiss. The delegates realized that she was not bluffing. The idea that one human could demand such attention from one of the galaxy's most powerful rulers was unfathomable. Elias shifted uncomfortably under the gaze of hundreds of eyes. He had been assigned as a cultural liaison, tasked with observing, learning, and helping humans communicate with other species. He had expected nervous glances, curiosity, or perhaps mild amusement. But this was something entirely different. "Princess Cerixa," he said quietly, stepping forward, "I don't understand. I am just doing my job. Why would you claim me? The princess's eyes softened slightly, but her tone remained measured. Because, Elias, you are human. And humans possess qualities that the galaxy has forgotten, underestimated, or ignored. You have loyalty, empathy, and moral courage. You bond with others not for gain, but because it is right. You act with integrity even when it is inconvenient. That is why I have chosen you. Elias blinked. His heart pounded, and he felt a strange mixture of pride and fear. He had always tried to do what was right, but he had never imagined that someone as powerful as Princess Serixa would notice or value those qualities. The murmurs in the hall grew louder again, this time tinged with fear. Humans were unpredictable. They did not follow the rigid protocols and hierarchies that most species lived by. They were independent thinkers, emotional yet strategic, capable of forging alliances based on trust rather than fear or obligation. This made them fascinating, but also dangerous. Serixa raised her hand and the room quieted once more. I do not make this claim lightly. I have observed Elias and I have seen how he treats others with honesty, courage, and compassion. These qualities are rare in the galaxy. For that reason, I will protect him, and I expect all present to respect that protection. No one moved. No one spoke. For the first time in her life, Serixa saw the true impact of a human's presence, not through their strength or cunning, but through their very nature. Elias did not dominate by force. He did not manipulate or intimidate. He simply existed, and his existence commanded respect in a way that few beings could understand. As the delegates processed her words, Elias looked at Princess Serixa. I don't know what to say, he admitted. I've only been doing my job. I didn't mean to. You have done more than you realize, she interrupted softly. You have reminded me that the galaxy is capable of something better. You have reminded me that trust, loyalty, and empathy can be more powerful than fear, wealth, or armies. That is why you are hers alone. The hall was silent for a long moment. Some delegates stared in disbelief, others whispered urgently to their neighbors, and a few looked at Elias with awe and curiosity. No one had ever seen a human treated this way before, not as a tool, not as a diplomat, not as a curiosity, but as someone worthy of protection and respect. Finally, a Zeltron delegate, metallic and imposing, spoke. Princess Serixa, he said, his voice low and careful, what are the consequences if someone ignores your warning? Serixa's eyes narrowed, and a faint smile touched her lips. Then you will meet humanity without a guide. The meaning was clear. Humans were not violent conquerors, but they were unpredictable, resourceful, and bonded in ways the galaxy could not control. To meet a human without preparation was to face something that could not be measured, predicted, or manipulated. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. The weight of the princess's declaration settled on him like a mantle. He was not just a liaison anymore. He was under the protection of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Yet he was still himself, a human, small, ordinary, and entirely unprepared for what this would mean. As the delegates slowly regained composure, the princess stepped down from the podium. She did not smile, but there was a quiet pride in her eyes. She had made a statement that would be remembered, one that would reshape how humans were seen across the stars. Elias followed her to the side of the hall, still unsure of what to do or say. Princess Serixa, he whispered, I don't know if I can live up to this. I'm not. You don't have to, she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. You only have to be yourself. That is more than enough. For the first time in his life, Elias understood something important. Humans were not powerful in the way that others thought. They did not rely on strength, technology, or manipulation. Their power lay in their choices, their loyalty, and their ability to inspire others through simple acts of honesty and courage. As the hall emptied and the delegates returned to their discussions and negotiations, Elias felt a strange sense of calm. The galaxy was watching, judging, and speculating, but he knew one thing with certainty. he was not alone. Princess Serix's presence, her protection, and her unwavering belief in him were proof that humans mattered in a way the galaxy had forgotten. And for the first time, he realized that being human was not a weakness. It was a kind of strength that no one else could match. The summit would continue. The delegates would continue to whisper and wonder. But in the quiet moments, Elias could feel it. A new chapter had begun, one in which humans were not merely participants in galactic politics. They were catalysts, unpredictable, loyal, and astonishing in ways the galaxy was only beginning to understand. And Princess Serixa, the calm and calculated ruler, had made it clear. This human was hers alone. Elias had never imagined that one simple act of honesty could change the course of his life. Years before the galactic confluence had convened, when humans were still learning the ways of interstellar diplomacy, he had been assigned to a mission that seemed routine. Observe the Aurelian ascendancy, record their customs, and report back anything unusual. The Aurelians were a highly disciplined people. Their cities floated on luminescent clouds, their buildings shimmered like silver glass, and their citizens moved with grace and precision. Every action had meaning, every word carried weight. It was a society built on order, logic, and control. To Elias, a human who spoke quickly, laughed easily, and made mistakes, it had seemed overwhelming. On his first day among them, he had been introduced to Princess Serixa. She had been seated in a hall of mirrors, the light bouncing off her silver robes and making her appear as if she were glowing. She did not smile, but her eyes were curious, studying him with a precision that made him uncomfortable. "You are the human liaison," she said, her voice calm but piercing. "I have observed your species from afar. Tell me, why should I trust you?" Elias had blinked. The question had seemed simple, but the weight behind it was immense. Every diplomat, every observer had always tried to impress the Aurelians. They flattered, they exaggerated, they hid weaknesses. But Elias had simply shrugged. "Because I try to do the right thing," he said honestly. "Even when it's hard, even when no one else notices." That's how humans work, I think. Serixa had studied him for a long moment, tilting her head slightly. Then, without a word, she had stood and walked away. It had been a quiet test, one that no one else had passed in years. Elias had not known it then, but she had been watching him closely ever since. Over the following months, Elias had learned more about the Aurelian way of life than most humans could have imagined. He attended councils, observed ceremonies, and took careful notes on everything from etiquette to negotiation strategies. But he never pretended to understand more than he did. When he made mistakes, he admitted them openly. When he didn't understand a rule, he asked questions, even if others considered them foolish. Serixa noticed all of it. She noticed how he never tried to manipulate her or her advisors. She noticed how he treated servants with the same respect he gave to royalty. She noticed how he remained calm under pressure, how he refused to be intimidated, how he genuinely cared about fairness and truth. One day, during a minor council dispute, a delegation from a neighboring system attempted to pressure Elias into revealing sensitive information about human colonies. They assumed he would comply, believing humans were weak and pliable. Elias, however, calmly explained what he knew, but refused to divulge secrets that did not concern him. "I will not betray my people," he said, his voice steady. "But I will help you understand them if you ask respectfully." Serixa had been observing from the back of the hall. She had seen how every delegate's expression changed, some frustrated, some impressed, some confused. No human had ever spoken like that in an interstellar council. They had either obeyed or plotted. Elias had done neither. He had simply been himself. That night she called him to her chambers. The room was softly lit with walls that seemed to hum with quiet energy. She did not sit down. She did not smile. She merely regarded him with her sharp, silver eyes. "Why do you act this way?" she asked. Why do you refuse to manipulate, to flatter, to lie? Elias shifted, unsure how to answer. Because I don't think it's right to lie or cheat just to gain favor, he said slowly. I know it may seem weak, but I believe it's stronger to be honest. You learn more, you gain respect, and maybe you make someone else want to do the right thing too. Sarix's expression did not change, but her mind raced. She had lived her entire life believing that the galaxy ran on fear, cunning, and strategy. Power was taken, alliances were forged through negotiation or coercion, and loyalty was rare. And yet here was a human, small and unremarkable by her standards, demonstrating a kind of power she had never seen. She decided to test him further. Over the next several weeks, she presented him with difficult moral challenges. She asked him to choose between two unfair options, knowing that every choice would upset someone. She observed how he handled criticism, disappointment, and even danger. Each time, he remained true to his principles, finding creative solutions that satisfied no one completely, yet offended no one intentionally. It was during one such test that she realized something extraordinary. A neighboring empire had begun a cultural exchange program designed to lure humans into becoming political tools. Elias had been invited to their station, expecting to negotiate trade and diplomacy. When he arrived, the other delegates attempted to confuse him with contradictory information, hoping he would reveal weaknesses. Elias listened carefully. He asked questions to clarify details. He corrected misunderstandings politely. And then he did something that stunned everyone. He offered suggestions to improve their systems, ideas that were fair and beneficial to all, without asking for anything in return. Sarixa observed from afar, unseen. She had expected manipulation, confusion, maybe even embarrassment. Instead, she saw ingenuity, empathy, and clarity. Humans, she realized, did not need to dominate through force or strategy. They dominated through something subtler, their ability to inspire cooperation, respect, and trust. By the end of the mission, she understood fully why she could not ignore him. Elias was not extraordinary because he was clever or strong. He was extraordinary because he was human. And humans, she knew, had a way of changing everything around them. Back in the palace, she called him to her private study once more. This time, she spoke plainly. Elias, the galaxy underestimates your species. You are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most technologically advanced. But there is something about humans that is different. You are loyal, courageous, and compassionate in ways most beings do not understand. You bond with others, and once that bond is formed, it cannot be broken easily. That is why I chose you. Elias felt a rush of emotions he could not name. Pride, yes, but also fear, responsibility, confusion. But I'm just me, he said. I haven't done anything extraordinary. Being yourself is extraordinary, she said simply. You do not realize how powerful that can be. You influence, inspire, and endure in ways that even the greatest empires cannot predict. That is why I will protect you, and why I have made it known to the galaxy that you are mine to defend. He did not fully understand what she meant by mine to defend, but he sensed the depth of her commitment. This was not mere protocol or politics. She had chosen him, not as a tool, not as a pawn, but because she had recognized something unique in him. Over the following months, Elias continued his work as a liaison, but the dynamic between him and Sarixa shifted. He was no longer just an observer. He became a partner, a trusted individual whose opinions mattered not because of status, but because of integrity and insight. She sought his perspective on issues ranging from diplomacy to ethics, and he found himself influencing decisions in ways he had never imagined possible. The other delegations noticed. Whispers spread quickly through the halls of the Aurelian ascendancy. How could one human earn such trust and protection? Was it arrogance, luck, a sign of some hidden power? They did not understand that it was nothing mystical. Elias was human, and his humanity was his power. One day, while walking through the palace gardens, Sarixa spoke again. The gardens floated above the city, with streams of water defying gravity and plants that glowed softly in the dim light. Elias walked beside her, careful not to step on the floating stones. "You do not realize the effect you have," she said, her voice almost quiet as if speaking to herself. "You change the way beings think. You make them reconsider, reflect, and sometimes act better than they thought they could." Elias looked at her, puzzled. "But I'm just me," he said again. "I don't want to change anyone, I just try to do the right thing." "Exactly," she said, her eyes sharp. "That is what makes you so extraordinary. You do not force change. You inspire it without even trying. That is why I warned the galaxy. That is why you are mine alone. Not because I own you, but because the galaxy cannot predict what will happen if you are left unprotected." For Elias, the weight of her words settled slowly. He began to understand that being human was both a gift and a responsibility. He was small, ordinary in many ways, and yet he carried a potential the galaxy had not seen. He was not a weapon, a diplomat, or a ruler. He was a human being, and that was enough. As the sun set over the floating city, casting golden light across the gardens, Elias realized something profound. Sarix's choice was not about power, politics, or prestige. It was about recognition, seeing someone for who they truly were and understanding their value. In the galaxy, where species judged each other by strength, technology, or cunning, that recognition was rare and precious. And for the first time, Elias felt a sense of purpose that went beyond observation, reports, or diplomacy. He was not just a human among aliens. He was a human who mattered. He was a human who could inspire, influence, and endure. And he had a protector who saw that truth and would stand by him, no matter what the galaxy tried to do. That realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. The galaxy was vast, full of strange beings, unpredictable politics, and ancient grudges. But Elias knew he would not face it alone. He had someone who believed in him, someone who understood the strength of humanity in a way that few others could. And Princess Sarixa had made it clear. The galaxy could try to ignore humans, underestimate them, or even challenge them, but Elias was hers alone. Not in possession, but in protection, in recognition, and in understanding. That day, Elias understood what it meant to be human, and why the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The galaxy had barely begun to process Princess Sarix's declaration when the ripples of her choice began to spread. In every council chamber, embassy, and starship lounge, beings whispered about the human who had been claimed. Who was he? Why had a royal of the Aurelian ascendancy chosen him? Was it a political trick, a personal fascination, or something no one could understand? Elias Ward, for his part, continued his work as a cultural liaison, yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. Every meeting, every discussion, every delegation he encountered carried the silent weight of Princess Sarix's protection. People watched him more closely. Some approached him with curiosity, hoping to learn more about humans. Others approached cautiously, aware that any misstep could provoke the Aurelian princess. Elias noticed how differently the galaxy treated him. He no longer had the freedom to make small mistakes without consequence. Yet, strangely, he felt more confident. He had not changed. He was still the same human who had always tried to do the right thing. But now his honesty, his empathy, and his integrity were recognized, noticed, and in some cases feared. Delegations from other systems began to test him. It was subtle at first, questions phrased to confuse, offers of assistance laced with hidden motives, compliments designed to manipulate. They assumed that humans, being new to interstellar politics, would falter. Elias handled these situations in the same way he always had, with patience, clarity, and truth. He listened carefully. He asked questions to ensure he understood. He acknowledged mistakes when they occurred. He responded with honesty even when it was uncomfortable. And with each interaction, he saw the same pattern repeat. Beings who expected control, manipulation, or fear found themselves disarmed by something simple yet powerful, a human being sincere and consistent. Sarixa watched him from afar, often unseen. She observed how he handled delicate negotiations, how he navigated unfamiliar cultures, and how he treated those around him with respect and dignity. The more she watched, the more she understood why the galaxy had underestimated humans. They were not dominant through force or cunning. They were dominant through resilience, compassion, and the ability to inspire others without trying. One day, a delegation from the Nivori cluster arrived at the Aurelian Palace. They were known for their subtle manipulations and complex alliances. They intended to study Elias to see if they could find leverage over him. The meeting took place in a chamber that shimmered with holographic projections of distant star systems, each one spinning with precise calculations. The Nivori ambassador, a slender creature with translucent skin and large, expressive eyes, spoke first. "Human," they said, their tone polite but probing, "we wish to learn more about your species. Tell us, what is it that makes humans remarkable?" Elias paused, considering his words. He could have flattered them, said something impressive, or deflected, but he spoke the truth. "Humans are ordinary in many ways," he said. "We are not the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced, but we care. We care about each other, about fairness, about doing what is right. That is what makes us remarkable. Not power, not technology, but empathy and loyalty." The Nivori ambassador tilted their head, clearly uncertain how to respond. They had expected pride, arrogance, or at least caution. Instead, they were met with honesty and quiet strength. Sarixa, observing from the corner of the chamber, felt a small sense of satisfaction. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and now it was beginning to learn that underestimating them was dangerous. As weeks passed, Elias began to notice patterns in how other species interacted with him. They tried subtle manipulations, tested his patience, and even attempted to exploit his inexperience. Yet time and again, he responded with clarity, fairness, and empathy. He did not dominate, but he influenced. He did not command, but he guided. Slowly, beings began to respect him, not for power, but for integrity. Sarixa knew that this was the true danger of humans. They did not need weapons, armies, or grand strategies to change the galaxy. Their presence alone, when accompanied by honesty and compassion, could reshape systems, alliances, and perceptions. Humans inspired others to act better, to think differently, to reconsider long-held beliefs. One evening, she invited Elias to walk with her along the floating terraces of the palace. The terraces extended above the city, illuminated by soft, glowing lights and gentle streams of water that defied gravity. They walked in silence for a while, listening to the distant hum of the city below. "You have changed things," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "You do not realize how much. The galaxy is not ready for humans, yet they are already influencing it in ways no one can predict." Elias looked down at his feet, feeling the weight of her words. "I haven't done anything extraordinary," he said. "I'm just me. I try to be honest, to help, to treat others fairly. That's all." "That is more than enough," Sarixa said. "You do not see it, but your presence forces others to reconsider their actions. They cannot manipulate you easily, they cannot intimidate you, and they cannot predict your choices. That unpredictability, that honesty, it is something the galaxy fears without even knowing it." Elias nodded slowly, understanding for the first time the impact he had on the galaxy. He was not a weapon or a diplomat or a ruler. He was a human being, and that alone made him remarkable. The next challenge came from the Velari Syndicate, a coalition of species known for their cunning and subtle power plays. They invited Elias to participate in a cultural summit on a distant planet, hoping to test him, to see if he could be influenced or used. When he arrived, the Velari were polite and courteous, offering gifts, compliments, and opportunities for prestige. They attempted to lure him into revealing information about human colonies to gain leverage over him or his species, but Elias remained steady. He listened carefully, asked questions, and responded with honesty. He acknowledged what he knew, clarified what he didn't, and refused to be manipulated. The Velari delegates were baffled. They expected humans to be naive, easily flustered, or susceptible to bribery. Instead, they found themselves disarmed by something simple yet powerful, a human being true to his principles, unafraid to speak the truth, and unwavering in his integrity. Sarixa, observing from the palace through holographic surveillance, allowed herself a rare smile. She had known humans were extraordinary, but seeing Elias in action confirmed what she had suspected. Humans were not meant to be underestimated. Their strength was subtle, moral, and profoundly influential. As the summit continued, Elias began to notice small changes in behavior around him. Delegates who had attempted manipulation now approached him with genuine curiosity. Others who had ignored humans began to pay attention. Even those who had been openly dismissive found themselves reconsidering their assumptions. Elias realized that he was not merely surviving the challenges, he was reshaping the way others saw humans, and perhaps even the galaxy itself. One afternoon, during a quiet moment in the palace library, Sarixa spoke to him again. "You do not see it, Elias, but every choice you make has consequences beyond your understanding. The galaxy is watching, learning, and adapting to humans in ways it cannot predict. You are not dangerous because you fight or dominate. You are dangerous because you inspire, because you influence, because you remain true to yourself." Elias felt the weight of her words. He had always tried to do the right thing, but he had never imagined that his actions could have such far-reaching effects. "I don't want to be dangerous," he said softly. "You are not dangerous in the way most species think," she said. "You are dangerous in the way that matters most. The galaxy cannot control humans and it cannot predict them. That is why I claimed you, why I protect you, and why I will continue to do so. You are mine alone, not in possession but in recognition, in respect, and in understanding." Elias nodded slowly, finally beginning to understand. The princess's protection was not about ownership. It was about acknowledgement, seeing his value, recognizing his humanity, and standing by him in a galaxy that often failed to see what truly mattered. In the days that followed, news of the summit and the interactions with the Velari syndicate spread across the galaxy. Beings from distant systems began to take notice of humans in a new light. They observed, discussed, and debated the implications of Sarix's protection and Elias' behavior. The galaxy had expected humans to be weak, naive, or easily influenced. Instead, it found a species that could inspire respect, loyalty, and moral courage. It found a species whose presence challenged assumptions, disrupted expectations, and quietly reshaped the balance of interstellar relations. Through it all, Elias remained the same man he had always been. He laughed when something was funny, asked questions when he was unsure, and treated everyone with the same honesty and care he had always known. Yet through his simple actions, he had become something more than ordinary. He had become a symbol of what humans could achieve when acknowledged, respected, and allowed to be themselves. And Princess Sarixa, observing, guiding, and protecting, knew that the galaxy had only begun to understand the true power of humanity. The ripple of influence Elias created would continue to spread, subtly, quietly, and profoundly, reminding every being in the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated, ignored, or dismissed. In that realization, she found reassurance. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were also loyal, empathetic, and courageous. By protecting Elias, she had not only safeguarded a human life, but also ensured that the galaxy would encounter humanity on terms it could not control or manipulate. And for Elias, the days of being underestimated, overlooked, or ignored were over. He was a human, and that was enough to challenge an entire galaxy. The galaxy would continue to test him. It would continue to underestimate, speculate, and attempt to manipulate. But Elias knew, with the quiet certainty of someone who had been seen for who he truly was, that he was not alone. Princess Cerixa had made her choice. She had claimed him, not to possess, not to control, but to protect, to honor, and to recognize the extraordinary strength in being human. And with that understanding, Elias walked forward, ready to meet the galaxy not as a pawn or a diplomat, but as a human being, unpredictable, honest, and profoundly influential in ways the galaxy was only beginning to understand. The weeks after the summit were not quiet. News of Princess Cerixa's claim spread fast. Some welcomed it, some feared it. Many simply did not know how to react. Elias moved through the galaxy with new attention. He met ambassadors and scholars, engineers and artists, traders and teachers. People wanted to know what it meant to be human. They wanted to know why a princess would protect one. Not everyone was curious for kind reasons. The Meridian Exchange, a powerful trade coalition, watched closely. They saw opportunity. If humans could inspire trust and loyalty, those qualities could be valuable. They devised a plan that did not use force. It used the tools the galaxy favored: charm, clever rules, and the slow grind of commerce. They invited Elias to a high council about cultural patents. This council would decide whether a culture could claim ownership over small but meaningful practices: songs, stories, design styles. Meridian framed the issue as fairness for creators. It sounded reasonable. The real aim was different. They wanted to set rules that would allow them to own human cultural exports by contract. If they could control the way human stories and art move through the galaxy, they could profit, and more dangerously, influence human thought. Elias arrived at the Meridian Hall ready to listen, the way he always did. The hall was glass and bronze, full of soft light. Delegates smiled and bowed in friendly ways. Meridian presented projections, legal drafts, and polite arguments. Elias read the papers and asked questions. He noticed small traps in the language, clauses that moved rights from creators to collectors, words that would bind whole communities to unfamiliar law. He could have responded by signing a clever amendment, by making a legal point that left him neutral. That might have satisfied protocol and let the matter slide. Instead, Elias did the thing he always did when something felt wrong. He spoke plainly. "This is not fairness," he said. "These rules reward those who already have power. They make it harder for small creators to share their voices. They let other people decide what a culture is." His voice was calm. He did not accuse. He explained. "If we want fairness, then give creators choice. Let them keep what they make. Let them share when they want." The Meridian delegates listened. Some were annoyed. Some looked startled. One senior merchant smiled politely and opened another clause, trying to pull the argument back into legal nuance. Elias asked another question. He showed a simple amendment that would protect creators and still allow trade. His suggestion was fair. It did not favor one side. But Meridian did not want fairness. They wanted control. In secret, they began pushing behind the scenes. They spoke to media networks. They arranged flattering features about a world where culture could be packaged, taxed, and exported by large houses. They whispered to smaller systems that this would help them earn money. Slowly, the mood shifted. Opinion pieces, artistic reviews, and polite forums began to nudge toward Meridian's view. Cerixa watched from her palace as the campaign unfolded. She did not move with swords or fleets. She moved through conversation, through example, and through pressure that fit her values. She asked Elias what he wanted to do. He did not want to fight. He wanted people to understand. They did something few expected. They started a conversation that the galaxy could not ignore. Elias visited markets and studios. He spoke with singers and sculptors, with code artisans and archivists. He asked them what they wanted. He recorded their answers. He helped them draft clear, simple terms they could use to license their work. He showed them how to protect their rights without shutting the galaxy down. Sarixa used her influence too. She invited debate in neutral halls, sponsored fairs where creators could show their work, and opened the Aurelian archives to demonstrate a model of shared stewardship rather than ownership. She spoke not as a ruler who would command, but as one who had chosen to stand beside a human who asked for fairness. The Meridian exchange pushed harder. Their media streams intensified, and some delegates started to withdraw support from the fair rules. The pressure built like a dark cloud. It did not look dangerous in the way empires feared, but it could be enough to write laws that would bind future generations. Then something happened that Meridian had not planned for. The artists and small creators, humans and non-humans, began to act together. They refused to participate in shows tied to the new contracts. They pulled their work from trade routes tied to Meridian distributors. They did not shout or storm halls. They simply stopped cooperating. Musicians canceled concerts. Storytellers withdrew scripts. Designers declined commissions. Merchants noticed slowdowns. The scenes were subtle, but the effect spread. Meridian could have pushed through with laws while the pullback ruffled trade. But the backlash was not only economic, it was moral. Sarixa had invited scholars and emissaries from many cultures to speak about what culture meant. They published essays and held forums in public plazas. People from many worlds read the words and watched the art disappear from Meridian shelves. The coalition's polite arguments began to sound ugly. Elias watched this unfold and felt something unfamiliar, a deep, quiet pride. The humans he knew did not stage grand shows of unity often. They showed solidarity in practical ways. They joined with others. They canceled contracts together, not for revenge but to protect the right to be heard. The confluence could not ignore the change. Several smaller systems stepped forward and offered to mediate a new framework, one that respected creators, enabled trade, and prevented monopolies. Meridian balked. They had believed that a few clever contracts would bring profit for decades. Now they faced a coalition of creators, the public voice, and a princess who had chosen to stand beside a human. Behind closed doors, Meridian suggested a compromise. They proposed a limited pilot. Elias accepted the pilot only on one condition: that it would be transparent, revocable, and governed by the creators themselves. Meridian agreed, partly to save face and partly because the slow economic harm had begun to show. When the pilot began, it worked differently than Meridian had planned. Creators were given clear control. They could choose licensing terms and revoke agreements. They could form councils to ensure fairness. The public followed the process openly. Many small creators, given their choice back, agreed to participate with fair terms. Trade resumed, but not in the way Meridian had once imagined. The result surprised everyone. Instead of locking culture into boxes, the new system allowed more voices to travel. Trade grew in fresh directions. New collaborations formed across old divides. People were honest about how much they wanted to be paid and how much they wanted recognition. The galaxy learned to balance profit and respect. Meridian's power did not vanish, but it shifted. They learned that control could not replace choice. Through it all, Elias kept his steady habit of listening and honest speech. He intervened when misunderstanding flared. He reminded people of the human value that had drawn Sarixa to him: fairness, empathy, and stubborn moral clarity. He did not revel in being right. He kept working. That constant, small effort moved more than treaties. If Meridian had hoped to gain ownership over human culture, their plan had failed. Not because of force, but because people from many worlds chose a different path. The galaxy changed because many small acts of refusal and good sense added up. Serex's warning had become more than protection for one life. It had become a reminder that respecting others could be stronger than dominating them. In the quiet that followed the Cultural Council's decision, a new discussion began. The Confluence wanted to formalize what it meant for a ruler to assert protection over an individual from another species. They feared confusion, private wars, and hidden contracts. Serexa and Elias were summoned, not in accusation, but to help shape a new custom that would prevent misuse. They spoke openly. Delegates asked careful questions. Serexa explained why she had acted. Elias explained what protection meant to him. He made a point that surprised many. "I do not want to be owned," he said plainly. "I do not want the galaxy to think a person can be taken as property. That is not the protection I asked for. I want a promise. When someone under another ruler's care is treated unfairly, we speak up together. We do not own people, we stand by them." Her advisors had expected a claim anchored in ritual and law. Elias wanted something different. He wanted a pact of responsibility. He wanted protection that respected a person's voice and allowed them to act without being used as a symbol. Serexa listened. She had chosen him because he was human, because he taught her to see a different kind of strength. She had claimed him in the moment because she feared the galaxy would harm what it did not understand. Standing in that assembly, she realized that her act had to become something smarter and kinder. They drafted the new custom together. It would be called, by most, the Pact of Witness. It was not ownership, it was a promise. A ruler could declare someone under their witness, but that declaration came with limits. The declared person kept full rights. The declaring ruler pledged to protect their dignity, to ensure free speech, and to stand against coercion. If conflict arose, the declaring ruler would bring the matter openly to the Confluence. The Confluence would help mediate. Above all, the pact was reversible if abused. The delegates debated the wording for days. Some thought any such ritual would be abused. Others thought it necessary to avoid secret alliances. Serexa and Elias answered questions, offered examples, and proposed checks. They argued that honesty and openness were the best insurance against misuse. Representatives from creators' guilds insisted on clear revocation mechanisms. Merchants asked for transparency so trade could continue. After long discussion, the Confluence accepted the Pact of Witness with a cautious vote. The change did not fix everything. Old habits and old fears lingered. Some leaders grumbled privately. But the pact had one clear effect. It forced conversations into the light. It made promises public. It made responsibility visible. In the months that followed, Elias continued his work among the stars, but now with a new clarity. He could walk into a room and speak plainly without fear that someone would twist his words into chains. Peoples who had once tried to manipulate him began to meet him as a partner. Some friendships grew. Some rivals learned that honest exchange was better business than secret advantage. Serexa never claimed him as property again. She revised the ritual privately and presented it in the Confluence as an invitation rather than a demand. She spoke about the power of seeing another being, truly seeing them, and making a promise to stand with them. Her words came from experience. She had learned that protecting someone required humility as much as power. Elias learned something too. He learned that being seen could be heavy. It could bring responsibility and test his choices. He also learned that being seen could change systems in ways he could not have imagined. He felt humbled by the trust Serexa had shown, and by the trust many others had begun to place in him and in humanity. On a calm evening, they stood together at a palace viewport. Stars spilled across the sky like scattered lanterns. Ships of many designs moved slowly, each carrying people making choices. Below them, the city of the Aurelians glowed like a living circuit. You warned them, Elias said quietly, thinking of the confluence and the meridian halls. You told them I was yours alone. Sarexa looked at him. Her expression was soft and steady. You were mine alone when I needed to protect you, she replied. But you were never my property. You are human, and that is different from being a subject. I stand with you because of what you teach me. I stand because I choose to be better. Elias smiled. I don't know if I deserve so much attention. You deserve to be seen, she said. Often the world forgets the strength in being honest. You remind us. They watched the slow sweep of ships and the tiny lights of distant colonies. The galaxy was messy and far from perfect. Yet small, steady changes had begun. A coalition of creators had found fairness. A high-trade coalition had been nudged into better law. The confluence had crafted a pact that made promises public rather than private. It was not victory in any simple sense. It was the work of many hands, many voices, and many small acts of courage. Elias understood that his life would continue to be a series of quiet moments where honesty mattered more than rhetoric. He felt, for the first time, comfortable with the fact that being human could be a kind of power. Princess Sarexa stood beside him, a ruler who had learned to measure strength in different ways. She had warned the galaxy not to provoke war, but to shape a path toward fairness. In doing so, she had also learned to change. Her claim had become a pact, and her power had become a promise. Far from ownership, far from domination, they found a new shape of respect. It was fragile, yes. It would need tending, but it was alive. And as stars wheeled overhead, the two of them watched the long, slow work of change begin to spread across worlds in ways that did not demand obedience, only better choices. The alien princess warned everyone. The human was hers alone.